these are SQL ones. And I wanted to walk you through the initial steps for determining the number of columns in a database, in a particular table in a database, and then figuring out the data types in each one of those columns. And that's what these two levels do. So in this case, you have this, let me get to the description. And let me start this one off while I'm at it. So in the description, it says there's a SQL injection vulnerability in the product category filter, and the results of the query are returned in the application response itself. And you want to use a union attack. There is some SQL query that filters out based on category. And you want to be able to figure out the number of columns returned in the query for the category filter. And so you'll search for errors using the union command. Okay, so the idea is to determine the number of rows or number of columns in that query. And then as soon as you guess the right one, it'll solve the level. Okay, so this is the level. And so if I do any filter, you can see whenever the category is a particular, like in this case, GIFs, it's going to go into the database and select products based on the category. And so you can infer that this query is going to say select from products where category is equal to GIFs. And if that thing is injectable, you can add a union statement and determine, you can say union 1, union 1, 1, union 1, 1, 1 to figure out that, yeah, it's the number of columns. So that's basically the entire level. One of the things that you have to do is figure out, well, what character is going to break syntax? And so one of the things you can do is say, well, does a single quote break syntax? And then you can say, yes, it does. Give me an internal server error. So that's the first process. When you're spraying these characters around and you get one of these, you're like, yeah, it worked. And that's really simple, right? Like, so if you're participating in a bug bounty program and you got someone's website, that's the first thing you would do is just spray all the naughty characters and see if anything errors out, and then you got something. Because if I did a double quote, you'd be like, oh, basically it's assuming that the double quote is part of GIFs, so you didn't break syntax, right? So that's what this program is going to do. I have this try category function that just filters based on a category string that you give it, and then prints out the result. And let me give it the actual URL here. All of these programs require your dynamic lab ID. So that's what I'm going to do here. Okay, so that's the URL. And then I'm going to try all the different ones. I'm going to try GIFs and look at the output. I'm going to try the single quote and see that the internal server error is returned. And then I'm going to do the union select, and I'm going to basically give it different numbers of columns. Either one column is the union with a null, 2 columns, or 3 columns. And it turns out there's only 3. And then the last one will solve the level. But you don't know that a priori. I do, because I've solved this many times. So I'm going to run this thing. And then you get the category GIFs. And then it says that everything is fine. There's no problem. It gives you the results back. You give it the category a single quote. And then you get back internal server error. You give it the single quote union select null and null. Let me put this lab here so that we can see when it gets solved. I don't think it changes based on the level. I think it's always 3, but who knows? So then this will union a single column to this thing. And then you still get an error. So then maybe 2 columns is what I'm going to do next. And it gives you an error, and then 3 columns. And then you'll end up solving the level. And so this thing came back. And then you get the level. And I don't know if the rest of that. Okay, that's it. So that is figuring out the number of columns in this table that retrieves the category. Okay, so the next one, So this is the next step. And I really like PortSwigger because they really do a nice job scaffolding you up. Because once you figure out the number of columns, the next thing you want to do is figure out the data types for those columns. Because if the data types don't match in what you're doing the union with, you could actually break the web application code. The web application might be expecting a string. And if you did a union 1111 for integers, it's actually going to cause an error and crash the thing. So one of the things that you want to do is not only find the number of columns, but you want to find which columns have which data types. And that's what this one is. And you're going to use a union, and you're going to union a string. They say, hey, I want you to find columns that are compatible with string data. And the ones that are, as soon as you find a union that matches the column that has the string, you'll solve the level. Okay. And in order for them to really know that you've done this, they're going to give you a query string. Let me see. The lab's going to provide you a random value that you need to make appear within the query results in order to solve the level. And so when you go and you launch this level, it says, make the database retrieve the string NHS8MZ. And so that's the object of this level. So you're going to do this, and then you're going to add the union, and the union is going to need to union this string as part of its results. So this is the program for this. One of the things that I do is I get the site, and then I parse out the hint, because the hint is the string that I need to retrieve. If you go back up here and you inspect this element, this is the hint, and then this is the hint string. So the first part is to just basically parse out that hint string in this. That's what this thing is doing. It's basically splitting out and finding the hint. Okay, so then I'm going to try GIFs, and then I'm going to try union select the hint text with null null. I know that there are 3 columns here, so I'm going to match this hint text on all of the different columns. And when it returns back this hint text in that query, that's when the level gets solved. So let me do that. Oh, shoot, it already ran. Sorry. Did this already? No, it didn't get solved. Oh, that must be when I ran it last time. All right, never mind. Okay, I'm going to copy this back into this program. Oh, yeah, that was the last time I ran it. Okay, so, all right, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run this thing. Yeah, because that's not the string I need to parse back. Okay, so this is the string. The first one is to get the GIFs, gets a 200. The second one is going to select this string in the first column, and that gives me a 500. So I'm going to parse the server error that comes back. In this case, gives me a 500, meaning that the query failed. I'm going to try it on the last parameter actually, and that gives me a 500. And then in the middle parameter, this is what solves the level, and then you get that back and solve the level.